I am your host, Aisha Amin. My guest today is Bayina Sabur, and we will be speaking on domestic violence. According to the net, there are 3 to 4 million women are physically battered every year. Welcome, Sister Bayina, to Wake Up. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Can you tell us something about yourself?
I am a person that has been active in the movement of violence. I was first involved with gun violence, and from gun violence, I graduated into domestic violence. Myself, I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and being an activist is part of my healing. So I've undertaken being trained at Litch, Long Island College Hospital, to become a person that is on call twice a month, to be there for victims that become survivors as they come in.
Why did you become involved in the domestic violence movement?
Well, I became involved in the domestic violence movement because I had a friend, and we're going back now before domestic violence was fashionable. Her name was Kim. I was a little reluctant to say Kim, but I need to say it because it's sort of like a tribute to Kim. Kim and I, we worked together every day, and she spoke so fondly of her husband and her family. And she was so involved, with her family. However, she went away, she left the job, and she was at home. And one day, one of my coworkers came into my office and asked me if I knew, asked me to read this article in the newspaper. And then she asked me, she said, "Is this Kim?" And I read the article, and I said, "Yes, it's Kim." So, when I said it, of course, it was like I exploded inside because the article stated that my friend had been murdered. Her throat was cut, her son's throat was cut, and then her beautiful young daughter was abused. And so it was an overwhelming experience for me because we were together every day. We were very close. And my coping with it, I didn't know how to cope with it. Anyhow, in the meantime, I wasn't even identifying the situation that I was then living in, which was also abusive. I was in an abusive relationship myself, but I didn't know how to identify it. I kept making excuses, which is one of the major things that women that cannot identify exactly what's happening to them do.
What is domestic violence? Because a lot of people look at just the physical part as a mental part. What is exactly domestic violence?
Well, the description that's given among the movement in domestic violence, it's a pattern of cohesive tactics which can include physical, psychological, sexual, economic, and emotional abuse perpetrated by one person against an adult intimate partner with the goal of establishing and maintaining power and control over the victim.
But then why do females stay in this domestic violence relationship? Because the way I see it is that it seems like to me you can just walk away from it or walk out of the house when the man is not at home. But yet a lot of females stay. Why?
Well, that's a very easy way to look at it, what you're saying. But it's much more complicated than that. Women stay for so many reasons. They stay because of fear that the violence, may increase if they try to get out, of harm to their self and to their family, to their, partners, of losing their children. They stay because people won't believe them, and they'll be blamed when they tell people what's happening. They also stay for lack of financial resources, housing, food, clothing, child care, lack of job skills, and a lack of information. The main thing, they have no information. When, in my time, I had no information. In fact, let me explain something. There was no information. I'm talking about the late 80s, the 90s. This is before we had the explosion with the Simpson case. That was very supportive to the entire movement. It's very unfortunate what happened to Miss Simpson, Nicole Simpson, but it really gave fuel to the movement and made people realize that women are not mad when they call the precinct and ask, for support in their homes. Because back then, when you called, the police would come, look around and say, well, does this guy, he lives here, his clothes are here, whatever. Well, we can't do anything. And they would leave. Now, when they would leave, they would be leaving behind a volatile situation. A situation that was completely out of control. And in many cases, many women lost their lives or were badly beaten, and different things happened. But lack of safe, accessible resources. Then we have undocumented women. We have many women in this country that are here from other countries that have no legality. And of course, they're afraid if they speak out. So, it's so many different circumstances that people are in. So if women stay, that's a question that comes all the time. Well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just leave? And that's wonderful, but you have no idea of what she is going through psychologically.
So in your time dealing with the females and those who stay, what do they be thinking in their mind when they do stay? I mean, you have sat and spoke with several females, but what do they, what's in their mind, what makes them actually stay? What are they thinking?
Well, they're thinking that maybe this will pass. Maybe he's just, out of control. Something happened inside. He won't share. He won't express it. Because, one thing about the batterer, it's sort of like an on-again, off-again thing with him. After he does all of this, he begs and he pleads, oh, please, I'll never do this again. I love you. So he's got her, she's on a yo-yo. She's on she's going up and down a seesaw. And it's very, very hard for her because she's emotionally involved. This is her husband.
But are you saying, too, that she has so much hope that this would change around?
She's married. Usually, okay, we're talking about a relationship of emotion, where love and marriage and commitment has been involved. So we know that when you marry someone, there's a lifetime duration inside of that. When you love someone, it's you're for better, for worse, you're in it through thick and thin. So sometimes things get thin. But what happens is she begins to lose her ability to judge, evenly and correctly, because she's been manipulated so, what can we say, so thoroughly, by him, under his control. So if he comes in and things are not the way he wants them, and he's in whatever kind of mood he is in, then he may exercise violence. And then maybe he might come in and he would be just the nicest person in the world.
But how do a female get out of a situation like that?
Well, she has to, there's always what you call the boiling point, or the point where you can't take anymore. You're at the edge, you're at the end. And that's the point where that's the most dangerous point. Because usually that's where most women are murdered, or, something tragic happens to them, is when they're really trying to get out. But if she has had any kind of help, or if she has sat down maybe and took time to think about, what her, resources are. Perhaps she has gone to her church or her imam, if she's a Muslim, or whatever her, where she gets her spiritual, food from. Maybe she's reached out to someone, or maybe someone has reached out to her. See, this is what I'm saying. We have to be able to recognize in our communities when we see people, women and children, and men, because some men are bad at too. The percentage, of course, is greater in the female than it is in the male. But we do have male battering as well, women battering men. But we have to be able to, this is really one of the major reasons why I'm involved in this, is to educate people that, they don't have to be abused, They didn't ask for this, and we need to be able to recognize this when we see people, because there's different things that start to happening to people. Their self-esteem starts to go. In a household like that, this could have been a very high-profiled woman who married a man who has this personality of being the Lord and Master of the manor. If we go back into the beginning of history, we know that men always lorded over the women. And the whole phase of violence, actually it's worldwide violence, it's pervasive. The violence, we're in a state of violent commotion all over the world right now as I speak. So this type of violence winds up right in your household. If the person that you're married to or you're with has these type of characteristics within their personality.
How does this affect the children?
Well, the children are definitely affected by this. The majority of men who batter their female partners are also abusive to their children. Between 50 to 70% of men who abuse their female partners also physically abuse their children. The abuse of children is generally less severe than the abuse of the female partner, but as the violence against the partner gets worse, the child abuse gets worse. And there is also a high correlation between men who abuse their female partners and those who also sexually abuse their female children. But children from families in which there is adult domestic violence often suffer negative consequences, even if they are not the direct target of abuse. Children who witness their mothers being abused by their fathers often exhibit health problems, sleeping difficulties, anxieties, acting out behavior in school or other places, and feelings of guilt and powerlessness. They are at high risk of alcohol and drug use as they grow into teenage life and pregnancy, homelessness, and suicide. And research suggests that there is an increased risk for boys who grow up in homes in which there is domestic violence to perpetrate domestic violence on their adult intimate relationships.
Let me ask you a question on this. What are the signs, or if a child is being sexually abused or something like that? What are the signs, like as an individual looking in? What if I see a child around me? What type of signs will I see to identify what that child is being abused in some sort of way?
Well, you see isolation. The child might start becoming withdrawn in the home and even in school. You will see hostility in the child, perhaps towards the person in the household that's committing this act of crime on the child. You will see just a general dissipation in the child's behavior. Everywhere he goes. withdrawing from the mother, you know, where the mother and the child might have had a very close relationship. The child starts to, the lack of communication, not communicating, and there's so many different things that begin to happen to the child. And that's the beginning of the child's life path. You know, that we have so much of that in our communities. How it comes from abuse in the home, from domestic violence, perhaps with the father to the mother, or maybe the mother to the father. But it also comes from, if there's any kind of sexual dysfunction in the home, then it's definitely, that's affecting the child. This starts this child off in life at a disadvantage.
Let me ask you a question, because I know there was one time I heard about a case wherein it was sexual abuse to the child, but yet for many years, and the girl grew up and she had a couple of kids, and she wound up actually, what she said, she was in love with the guy. What can you say about something like that?
You mean the child was
sexually? The child was sexually abused as she was young, and then as she got older, she did have children by him.
Oh, okay.
And then she felt that she was in love. You know, what can you say about something like that in a situation like that?
Well, because she was a child, and he was the first one to come to her life in that manner, and she felt some kind of loyalty or closeness to him. And so she wasn't able to separate the abuse, that he was an abuser. You know, so then she felt that, you know, this is where she was getting her, what can you say, affection or concern or whatever for. So then she just went on and continued in it. But probably as life unfolds and problems begin to crop up from herself through her children, this will all have to come to some type of fruition, which would be quite overwhelming for her when she realizes, you know, the path that her life has gone on.
But I wonder what really goes on in her head that, you know, she's feeling that she's in love.
Well, you know, when a young girl, I had the same situation. One of my beloved friends, she married a man, and of course she had 2 children already, and 2 beautiful children, by the way, that she worked very hard to raise and take care of. And the man, her husband, betrayed her by going after her 14-year-old daughter. So he started, you know, having sexual relationships with her daughter while a mother was at work. So the daughter formed a confidence, you know, in the man, and she isolated herself from her mother. And in the process of isolating herself from her mother had no idea of what was going on. So as time went on, mother found out about it, and it became just, it was horrendous for the mother. The mother was just absolutely overwhelmed that her child had been, you know, this had gone on, of course, and the child decided that she would go with the man. She decided against the mother.
So what can you say about when there is children who are being abused and the child comes up to the mother and she's speaking to the parent about what's going on, but yet the parent refuses to actually see the truth?
Well, at that point, I think the child should go to someone in the family, or, you know, or the teacher at school or somewhere, because today it's different from the way it used to be. Everything used to be locked down, you know, where, you know, you could go to people and say, well, you could have a black eye. I remember people arriving at work with black eyes and sunglasses, and nobody believing the story that they told them, that they had been abused by their husband. You understand? But today people are looking at these things because people have more knowledge. That's what this is about, is information. People have more knowledge. You see a sister, you know she's always happy and whatever, and now she comes and she's dragging, her shoulders are down. You know, she's getting these calls on the job or wherever she is, and it's not anything that's uplifting to her. So with the child should, at that point, she has to break the silence, the conspiracy of silence that has been set up, which we have in the communities too, by the way. We have communities that are, well, I call them on lockdown. Women are being abused. A lot of the religious communities and a lot of the, ethnic communities, different people claim that everything is in utopia. And so nobody's going to step outside of those communities to say that we're not in utopia. So we put on the facade, and the women are suffering and the children are suffering, and we're not making healthy people. So I would say if a child is under or an adult, because certainly if I had it to do again, having the information that I have, I would have never allowed myself to live the way I did. But I did try to seek help from inside of the community, but the support that I got, it wasn't helpful to me. It was helpful to the perpetrator. And of course, you know, having the faith and the belief, being a person that wanted to do the right thing, I would just go along with what I was advised to do by the judge, you know, the people that were sitting there giving the judgment. And with children, I mean, they don't know, you know, what to do. So I would say today there are more people listening and watching and willing to help you.
Okay, I would like to ask you, where can, if there's someone out there that's watching the program and they feel that they don't know where to go, could you give some sort of information or where an individual can go to get help if they need help, if they have to get away from the individual as soon as possible? Could you give that, give the audience that information, please?
Certainly. Well, listen, if it's dire, if it's a dire circumstance, it's like you just have to get out right now. You can call the New York City 24-hour domestic violence hotline. And that number is 1-800-621-HOPE. HOPE. And then also, the numbers are 4673. That's what HOPE is. Also, if you've been battered, if you've been beaten, if you've been sexually assaulted, or even if you haven't, if you really think you're in a situation that warrants some immediate attention, call the Victims of Violence Program, Rape Crisis Intervention Program at Long Island College Hospital, and that number is 718-780-1459. And the counselors there, I mean, they're very amenable, and the advocates there are there to help the victim become a survivor.
Okay, we'd like to can you give us a little more information on, could you actually state this over again, say this over again, so the people can actually get the numbers better, because you did announce the numbers one time, and we'd like to say it again, so
Certainly.
This way they can have time to write it down again.
Yes. Okay, the New York City 24-hour domestic violence hotline is 1-800-621-HOPE, which is 4673. That's the numbers for HOPE. Also, if you've been abused, physically abused, and you have to go for help to the emergency, go to Victims of Violence Program at Long Island College Hospital. And that number is 718-780-1459.
And I would like to ask you too, is why, from what I understand, according to the net, it states that 92% of battered women do not discuss the abuse. Why?
What do you mean they do not?
They don't, according to the net, they don't discuss it with their doctors.
Oh, well, that's because of shame and denial. Actually, today it's a bit different because they have, like, when, let's say if you're going to the doctor, if you're going into emergency to triage, they ask you questions that directly relate to abuse. And they can find out by asking some questions, some key questions, as to whether this illness or whatever you're coming for might be related to domestic violence. Wherein years ago, that was overlooked.
So I would like to ask you, what about the men, when the men be abused? You know, I know we don't really hear too much of that. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Or?
Well, the circumstance would be the same. It would be one partner trying to manipulate and control the other partner. And most of the time that comes through the attitude of how I'm supposed to relate to you as a man, or how I'm supposed to relate to you as a woman. You're not doing what I said that you're supposed to be doing. And of course, so, you know, a lot of times they get this mixed up with substance abuse, with drug abuse, and with alcohol. They get it mixed up. And so what they do is they try to tie them in. But being an alcoholic or a drug addict has nothing to do with being a batterer.
Okay, Sister Bayina, I want to thank you for coming to Wake Up. And I would like to thank the audience also for tuning in to Wake Up. If you have any comments or questions, you can write to Aisha Amin, 1178 Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, 11216. I would like to thank the audience again for tuning in. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.